At 0600 hours local time, F-15 Strike Eagle surged towards Syrian airspace. Their orders were to erase 70 enemy command posts from the map. The extremists who attacked American forces last week believed they were hidden. But over the next 6 hours, pilots and artillery crews would strike targets intelligence had hunted for 3 years. At 0647, the first F-15s crossed the border. The weapon system officers, or WIZOs, immediately focused on the radar warning receiver. A Syrian S-band early warning radar had gone active. This system feeds critical targeting data to surface-to-air missile batteries. The pilot maintained course. If that radar was slaving a SAM battery, they had only seconds to react. 6 seconds passed before the radar swept on. The WIZO exhaled. Deconfliction held, for now. However, the deconfliction window was narrowing. Syrian air defense crews were scheduled to rotate shifts at 0700, just 38 minutes away. The incoming crew might not be briefed on the mission. Every minute past that deadline increased the risk of a friendly fire incident. The Syrian desert opened up below. Ridgelines were nearly indistinguishable from dozens of other sand-colored formations. Somewhere in this emptiness sat the command posts that coordinated last week's attacks. In a few minutes, they would be reduced to smoking craters. In the lead Strike Eagle, the WIZO activated the AAQ-33 sniper targeting pod. The infrared display locked onto a compound 40 kilometers out. Structures were clustered around a central building with heat seeping from vents. This suggested the underground spaces promised by intelligence analysts. But matching coordinates is not the same as confirming a target. The APG-82 radar showed something was there, but it could not define intent. The desert terrain is unforgiving, often blurring structures into rock formations. The difference between a valid target and an abandoned building relied on human judgment. The WIZO cross-referenced radar data with satellite imagery and thermal signatures. He asked the only question that mattered: is this still the right thing to hit? A borderline shot would waste a $25,000 weapon on empty space. A wrong shot could create an international incident by the next morning. The calculus took 5 seconds. It was a decision based on pattern recognition and professional paranoia. The target was confirmed clean. The WIZO knew there were still 69 other aim points in the folder. The WIZO said one word: rifle.
Copy.
The GBU-31 fell away and began its battle with physics. Tail fins adjusted 50 times per second to fight wind shear. Simultaneously, GPS triangulated the position to within 3 meters. If GPS was jammed, the bomb would switch to inertial guidance. Accuracy would drop to 15 meters, but the mission would still be accomplished. The pilot rolled left, not needing to watch the impact. The Strike Eagle would be 15 kilometers away when the bomb hit. The tail kit gave the GBU-31 a glide ratio for high-altitude standoff. The pilots let geometry do the work. At 0648, the countdown ended. A flash appeared on the targeting pod, followed by a bloom of gray on the infrared. Over 400 kilograms of tritonol explosive converted the post into a sphere of pressure. The blast wave shattered structures designed to hide from satellites, but not to survive them. There was no time to admire the results. Fuel gauges were dropping, and the target list remained long. By 0800, the Strike Eagles had cleared 19 more positions across Syria, but the list was not shrinking fast enough. The problem was the terrain. GPS bombs are surgical in open desert, but many targets were tucked into deep valleys. Some buildings showed thermal signatures that did not match intelligence photos. They might be valid targets, or they might be full of civilians. From 25,000 feet, sensors see heat, but cannot see intent. Someone needed to get close enough to confirm targets in real time. At 0900, two A-10 Thunderbolts pushed north at 15,000 feet. They were tasked with targets requiring visual confirmation in high-threat terrain. The Air Force brought the most effective close-air support platform ever built. The A-10 pilots were like hunting dogs, sent in after the first shots were fired. The lead pilot descended towards a ridgeline suspected of being a weapons cache. At 8,000 feet, the targeting pod resolved the final details. It was a reinforced structure built into the hillside with visible ventilation pipes. The thermal signature confirms someone was trying very hard to stay hidden. The GAU-8 Avenger rotary cannon produces nearly 5 tons of recoil. This is enough to slow the aircraft by 20 knots during firing. The Air Force did not just mount a gun on a plane. They built the plane around the gun. The firing barrel is aligned exactly with the aircraft's center axis for precision. The pilot rolled in, nose dropping toward the target as airspeed built. At 6,000 feet, the reticle settled on the bunker entrance. 70 rounds per second of depleted uranium tore through the air. The human ear cannot separate the shots. It sounds like a continuous roar.
Confirmed.
The pilot held the
Firing
trigger
solution
for exactly 2 seconds before pulling off target. Suddenly, a missile warning lit up the cockpit. An SA-7 Grail man-portable missile had been launched from the ridge. The Seeker was designed in 1968 to chase the hottest thing in its view. The pilot immediately deployed flares. These flares burn at 2,000 degrees, far hotter than the aircraft's engines. To the missile seeker, the flares looked like the only target worth hitting. The missile veered away into the empty sky. That launch signature alerted every sensor in the battle space. The hidden position had just invited a visit from 30mm cannon fire. The A-10 rolled back in to finish the job. However, some targets were too far or hidden deep within canyon walls. For those, the pilots used the AGM-65 Maverick missile. The Maverick's infrared seeker locks on with total determination. The pilot designated the target from 4 miles away and squeezed the trigger. The missile accelerated off the rail, riding its own guidance to impact. By 1,000, the A-10s had serviced 11 fixed positions. The target list was down to 42, with 3 hours remaining. Even the A-10s have limits on fuel and pilot fatigue. As they broke off for the tanker, a gap in air coverage appeared. The extremists below calculated they had time to move and disappear. They were about to learn that silence does not mean safety. The M142 HIMARS may look like a standard truck, but it carries 6 GPS-guided rockets. It can strike targets 50 miles away with single-digit accuracy. At 10:15, 3 HIMARS launchers were positioned in the Jordanian desert. They had waited for the moment when air coverage thinned out. The crew received coordinates from the Tactical Operations Center. Assets were being prepared to move, but the extremists were mistaken about their safety. The launcher elevated its pod as the computer confirmed the firing solution. HIMARS does not need hours of survey. It knows its exact location via GPS. The rockets left the pod with a white-hot plume into the morning sky. Flight time to the target was 90 seconds. The crew began displacing the launcher before the rocket even reached its peak. In the artillery world, the rule is shoot and scoot to avoid counter-battery fire. The launcher was 1,000 meters away when the first retaliatory mortars hit the empty dirt. The American crews had turned displacement into muscle memory. By 1100, HIMARS had fired 12 rockets into 4 target areas. The list was down to 31, but the remaining targets were the most difficult. These required a specific angle of attack that rockets could not provide. For these, the Army deployed the AH-64 Apache. Operating from a forward arming and refueling point, FARP, 2 Apaches took off. They stayed at 200 feet, hugging the train to avoid detection. At this altitude, they were in range of machine guns and RPGs. A Zu-23 anti-aircraft gun opened fire from 800 meters away. The gunner was aiming where the helicopter had been, not where it was. The rounds went wide, but the muzzle flash revealed the gunner's position. The Apache's TAD system locked on instantly. 4 seconds later, the anti-aircraft position was destroyed by a Hellfire missile. The Apache's secret weapon is the link between the gunner's eyes and the machine. The 30mm chain gun follows the gunner's head movements 60 times per second. At 1140, a hardened bunker appeared on the thermal display. The pilot hovered behind a ridgeline, exposing only the sensors and rotor mast. The laser activated, and a Hellfire missile began riding the reflected energy. Impact. The bunker entrance disappeared in a white flash. Secondary explosions confirmed that weapons were indeed stored inside. The Apaches hunted as a pack.
Confirmed Winchester.
using cooperative
Returning
geometry to
base.
strike from multiple angles. This was the precise work
As
that
the sun
high-altitude
rises over the
sensors
desert,
could not
a
achieve.
formidable formation
By
of strike
1230,
eagles and
the
warthogs
final aim point was
demonstrates
serviced
aerial
by a
precision.
Strike Eagle's JDAM. The wizard checked the target folder one last time. The status was Winchester. The mission was complete.